We were talking about blue states and red states and whatnot and what have you, and this person says, why does it always have to be blue versus red, black versus white? Instead of letting the powers divide and conquer, why we unite as one and rebuild better for all? And that's the way it used to be in this country, right? It used to be that Americans generally stuck together and Americans generally cared for Americans. And there were supporters of this president and supporters of that president, but for the most part, we were all Americans, and we all came together when the shit hit the fan, when the rubber hit the road, so to speak. Pick a euphemism, pick a terminology. But we've moved beyond that at this point in time. The bottom line is that we don't have Americans versus Americans. We literally have Americans versus fascists. And listen, I know that there are going to be MAGA people that are going to come into the comment section and go, here we go, dividing and fear mongering again. It's the truth. You have a political movement in MAGA that does not think certain people should have the right to exist. Trans people. You have a political movement in this country in MAGA that is leaning into the fascism skid and has no problem with denying rights of other Americans, stripping away the rights of Americans to vote, locking up Americans that they don't agree with. There's a certain segment of MAGA that's all in favor of doing away with future elections and just letting Donald Trump be a dictator for the remainder of his life. There's a certain segment of MAGA that's okay with detention camps to put people who don't agree with them in. There is a certain segment of MAGA that's in agreement that anybody that doesn't think like them, anybody that's a liberal or a Democrat, should be deported, even though we were born and raised here. How does one come together with that? How does one sit down and reach across the aisle with that? MAGA put a man in power who put Supreme Court justices in place that made the difference between keeping federal protections for women's privacy in the doctor's office and overturning it. And as a result, my wife, my daughters, my granddaughters, my sister-in-laws, my cousins, my aunts, they don't have rights in certain states over their own bodies, their own privacy with a doctor. How do I sit down and reach across the aisle with that? How do I say, you and I need to come together and fight the powers that be, when those people are supporting the powers that be stripping away rights? We're talking about people who stormed the Capitol, invaded our nation's Capitol building in an attempt to stop the counting of a free and fair election and install a dictator over the will of the people. People who wanted to take my vote away from me, my wife's vote away from her, my daughter's vote away from her, and say, no, it doesn't matter how you guys voted. This is how we want the election to go. How the fuck could you possibly expect me to sit down across the table from one of those people and go, yeah, we need to come together to fight the powers that be? I don't come together with fascists. Never have, never will.